Tonight, the U.S. sanctions Russia for its role hacking our elections. Now the Russians are threatening to retaliate. We'll take you through the details, plus analysis and what may happen next from our Russia expert. Then we're talking Trump. His BFF tweets with the Israeli prime minister. How seriously should we take Trump on Twitter? Plus his latest jobs announcement. And does Trump's election mean we're in a new era where net worth equals a person's real-world net value? And later, that beautiful new bridge going up over the Hudson, we think we know how much it's going to cost. We're not sure how we're going to pay for it, and drivers have no idea how much they'll be asked to pay. We talk with State Senator David Carlucci, who's pressing for answers. Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Andrew Whitman, in tonight for Richard French. The Russian government knew about efforts to hack the U.S. elections, specifically to help Donald Trump and to hurt Hillary Clinton, and it happened with the involvement of top Russian officials. That has been the word in Washington for weeks now, and today the U.S. responded for the first time publicly with actions beyond words. And reaction was swift from both countries and here from both parties.
U.S. retaliation against Russia's cyber attack. The Obama administration naming names and kicking 35 Russian operatives out of the U.S.
The sanctions today were aggressive and they were bold, and they're designed to send a message to Russia that this type of behavior is unacceptable.
President Obama is still on vacation in Hawaii, but he gave the green light to punish Russia and its president, Vladimir Putin, for trying to interfere in the 2016 U.S. election. The administration slapped economic sanctions against several Russian intelligence services, top military officers, and companies accused of providing support. The State Department is also shutting down 2 Russian intelligence compounds in Maryland and New York. The Kremlin continues to deny involvement, saying if Washington actually takes new hostile steps, then it will get a response.
Do I think in reality it will change how Russia is doing business in the cyber world? The answer is no.
U.S. intelligence says Russia's goal was to help President-elect Donald Trump, who continues to question the findings.
I think we ought to get on with our lives. I think that computers have complicated lives very greatly.
House Speaker Paul Ryan slammed the Obama administration, calling the new sanctions overdue. Senator John McCain accused Russia of also meddling with other countries.
It is a threat to the very fundamentals of democracy.
The White House and Congress are still waiting on that broad intelligence community review of Russia hacking. President Obama also hinted to covert actions against the country, but with 3 weeks until Inauguration Day, it would be up to President Trump to take further action against Russia. Kenneth Moten, ABC News, Washington.
So what do today's new sanctions mean, and how might that impact the future of U.S.-Russian relations? Well, for that, we turn to Professor Matthew Schmidt. Matthew is a professor of political science and national security at the University of New Haven. He is also RFL's Russia and Ukraine expert. Matt, welcome back to the show.
Hi, Andrew.
So the U.S. kicks out 35 Russian intelligence operatives and shutters 2 compounds in the U.S. How impactful is that as a penalty against Russia, and where would it be on the scale of major or minor penalties?
It's a major penalty in the sense that 35 is a lot, but it's minor in the sense that that's sort of par for the course, and that's the standard response. Where the response becomes unstandard is naming the 4 officials of the intelligence agencies in Russia, and then even more so, what we don't know about per se are the covert side of things.
So, Matt, is this designed more to hurt Russia or embarrass Russia?
This is the public shaming part of the U.S. response, so it's the first half of it. What we've been told anyway is going on simultaneously is the covert side, which I think is where the real hurt comes.
No word today of any additional economic sanctions from the U.S. on Russia. Any idea why not?
My best guess is that the Ukraine sanctions are still in place, and that imposing more sanctions risks, in the words of President Obama, sort of an unproportional or disproportional response in that case, risks hurting the Russian public.
A spokesman for Vladimir Putin after the announcement today came out and said that Russia is considering retaliatory measures. Any idea what those measures might be, if they're going to stay in kind to what the U.S. did to Russia or even go beyond it?
Well, first, I think the in-kind question is the real thing to pay attention to. I'm not sure that they feel any compunction to. But I would expect that you would see at first the same kind of doxing that happened originally, that is the release of embarrassing information on officials. The American response on this is going to be interesting because offensive cyber warfare is kind of like having a spreadsheet with a list of weapons that you only get to use once against an adversary, because once you use it, they know how to defend against it. And so the U.S. here is carefully deciding which weapon it wants to lose capability for against Russia. as it goes about deciding how it's going to, I think, shame Vladimir Putin and shame other public figures back.
So it would basically be essentially the equivalent of hacking Russia, exposing some secrets that they might have or trying to otherwise publicly embarrass them. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that would be my best guess. In the case of Putin himself, I would expect that the U.S. has some exploits, some hidden code somewhere. They'll grab some information that's highly embarrassing to him, and they might wave it in front of him, but not release it publicly yet, sort of saying, look what we can do. You didn't think we could get to this, but we have it. And it's likely to be information either on where he's stashed money that he thinks nobody knows that he stashed it, or information on his attacks against journalists and other dissidents in the Russian Federation.
Okay, so we know that we're dealing with Russia right now when it comes to Syria, and we're still pushing for them to loosen their grip on Ukraine. How do today's developments, Matt, impact our negotiations with Russia on those two hotspots?
I think in Syria, the ship has basically sailed and Iran won. Assad's going to be in charge in Damascus for the foreseeable future, and Russia's going to have a hand in the region, a fairly significant one. And I don't think there's a lot that we can do there. Ukraine is an interesting question because of the incoming Trump administration. Again, I think what you see is that President Obama issued these sanctions under a 2015 law, and he's done them in a way that it would be a little bit difficult for the new administration to undo. They'd have to go to Congress. And there's a lot of support in Congress for sanctioning Russia for the invasion of Ukraine. To take one example, John McCain and the Republicans on the Senate Armed Services Committee.
Is there any chance, Matt, that we're looking at a good cop, bad cop situation with Obama and Trump in all of this? Obama imposes these measures today, which gives potentially Trump some wiggle room in negotiations. Hey, play ball with me on one or two issues, and maybe we can limit some of these actions that Obama took in December?
I would expect that a Trump administration would respond that way. It's an opportunity for them to do just that. I don't think it's any kind of coordinated move between the White House and the incoming president-elect.
Is this the kind of thing that could actually change the dynamic of the relationship between Putin and Trump? Could Putin all of a sudden say, maybe I don't want to be as friendly with the U.S. as I thought I was going to be with Donald Trump?
He could, but I think he could do that under any circumstances. This is an opportunity. The ball is really, I think, in President Trump's hands. The time between now and when he takes office is short enough that Russia will likely wait to do anything in order to give Trump an opportunity to move first.
We've talked on this program before, Matt, about what Putin wants, trying to get inside his head. And maybe he wants to be a bigger influence in the Middle East. Maybe he wants to put pressure on the Balkan states. There are other things that he's looking for. How does what happened today impact Putin's overall game plan for what he's looking for?
I think he'll spin it in his direction. He will say, look, the United States is not special to the rest of the world. There's corruption in its system. Look at the DNC emails, right? It's not unique. It's just as corrupt as we are. So when it goes out in the world and it complains that Russian elections are corrupt, or it complains that the Syrian government is corrupt, the idea is that by doing this to the U.S., he defeats the moral argument, at least to some of his audience in the world. And it reaffirms Putin's position as the number one target of the U.S. and as the number one leader of the anti-American, anti-West league in the world.
And finally, Matt, a lot of people, when they hear about U.S.-Russian relations, still go back to a Cold War mentality, us versus them. Do we anticipate any additional heat between Russia and the United States directly, or is this likely to play out in proxy issues in places like Ukraine and places like Syria?
I think the most direct heat that you're going to feel between the U.S. and Russia is in Europe. So you'll see that the Russians will push their fighter bombers closer to NATO countries. They'll be more aggressive in those kinds of games. You'll see things in the Black Sea. You'll see things around their border area. You'll see, I think, an uptick of that. And the next level escalation, I think, would be in Ukraine. And there are so many options for Putin there, I hesitate to speculate.
Professor Matthew Schmidt, Professor of Political Science and National Security at the University of New Haven. I promise you one day, Matt, you'll be on the program for good news. But until then, thanks for a few minutes.
Thanks, Andrew. Happy New Year.
All right, up next, we are talking Trump, his Twitter chat with a world leader, complete with emojis and everything. How seriously should we take Trump's tweets? Plus his latest announcement of jobs from one company and one company only, and his surprise guest in Florida.